Hey, Grover here with Old Ones with Dice. So, we're going to start our probably three-part series on how to put together a team for Gaslands. Most teams are set up as 50-can teams, so that's what we're going to be building in this series. I'm going to start out with my inspiration, that's what we're going to talk about today, and also the list building and what tools I use to make my list. So, what is Gaslands? You've probably, if you're watching this video, you probably are familiar with Gaslands. This is a tabletop, you might call it a miniatures war game. My wife likes to call it more of a board game because she doesn't like tabletop miniatures games. But this game is by Mike Hutchinson. So this is a game based on vehicle combat in a post-apocalyptic Earth. So your basic vehicles are going to be Matchbox and Hot Wheels size cars. Readily available, inexpensive, and basically you can do whatever you want with them. So everything is based around sponsors and perks. And then you can do weapons, vehicle upgrades, and it's all highlighted in the book. So, inspiration, when I start talking about inspiration, the game itself is obviously inspired by a lot of media in the real world. So movies like Mad Max, Fury Road, Death Race 2000, Fast and the Furious. It's going to be other items, media like video games. Twisted Metal comes directly to mind. There's definitely some Twisted Metal inspired abilities and weapons in here. You can look at comic books. Ghost Rider, one of the sponsors, is definitely inspired by Ghost Rider. So don't be afraid to steal ideas from this book because the book is inspired by other media and you can be inspired by other media. So for me, a lot of times I'm inspired by, well, first off, I go through the book. I'll just pick a random page and you're going to find examples of vehicles built. There's some amazing artwork in here. There's a lot of examples of built vehicles already, and some interesting artwork. And this is a really good book, and it's a great value. This is not an expensive book. It's not an expensive game to get into. So this is one of my favorites. It's often used as a background in a lot of the other titles. So I'm not going to get into gameplay of it or deep dive into the lore of Gaslands. Some other channels have done that much more effectively than I can. But what I'm going to talk about is inspiration and list building. So a lot of times I spend a lot of time digging through the dollar bins of Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars. And I come up with vehicles and I seem like, wow, that strikes me, I think that would look great on the table. My wife has kind of a comical, inadvertently Twisted Metal inspired ice cream truck. Also a buggy in that team. So I found this little comical looking VW bug. I think this will make a good basis for a buggy for her team. Sometimes I'll see things like this. This one, obviously this is the new Batmobile. I mean, there's a lot you can do with this. And actually, I have a ton of these. Every one I found, I grabbed. Sometimes I go kind of comical. I think there's something would be hilarious about a late 80s, early 90s Volvo station wagon with armor plating, missile launchers, machine guns, whatever mounted to it. So that's kind of inspiration. So it might be the vehicles. Otherwise, artwork, vehicles you've seen elsewhere, but also one of the big inspirations for me is going to be the perks and the sponsors themselves that are in the book. And the vehicle we're going to be talking about in this series is a single vehicle team based around the perk Murder Tractor. Normally in Gaslands, when two vehicles collide, first vehicle has finished its movement, the second vehicle comes in. Normally what happens once the second vehicle hits, movement stops, and you're going to play out the collision. Damage, hazards, those are going to be incurred. There's two exceptions to that. The first is going to be the up and over ability. This is available to tanks, monster trucks. So once a monster truck or a tank hits that first vehicle, it goes over the top. It continues its movement. The second ability is going to be pile driver. This is normally restricted to the semi-trucks, the battle wagons that think Fury Road. So when that hits, in this ability, roughly speaking, it's going to continue its movement, but it's going to be able to pick up that vehicle it hit and push it out of the way. And it's a short template distance away. So it's going to hit it, move it, and keep going. This can lead to a lot of carnage and chaos as you slam that into a wall, you push them into other vehicles, put them in a position where their turn, they have to ram into something. So there's a lot of fun there. So what I'm going to do is going to build around that. Now, one of the catches on pile driver is that, well, specifically murder tractor, is that it only works on vehicles smaller than yourself. So you're going to want to start with a heavy vehicle so you can hit mediums, cars, ice cream trucks, in your lighter vehicles like your buggies, motorcycles. So starting out, I knew as I'm building this team around this particular perk, I'm going to want a big vehicle. In my experience, I'm thinking, perhaps I will go with a dump truck, cement truck. Then it hit me. You know what would be really hilarious? A garbage truck. So I started looking around in those various bins, like where can I find a garbage truck? Unfortunately, a lot of the garbage trucks I found for Hot Wheels were small, kind of a small scale, actually no bigger than this thing. So I went on eBay and I found this one. Not exactly the color I like, but I like the styling. It's got the dual axles in the back, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm like, that's going to be the basis of my vehicle. It's also a little bit longer. Any sort of heavy vehicle is going to be limited. It's only going to have it's going to have 2 handling and maximum gear of 3. So it's going to need a little bit of an advantage. Now that I have this idea, I know what kind of vehicle I want. I kind of have a picture in my mind. I imagine a garbage truck with a snow plow on the front so it can push things out of the way, and perhaps some weapons to hit other vehicles as it goes by. So I have a kind of an idea in my mind, and this will kind of keep fleshing out as I add the perks and sponsors. So now, once I have that perk, I have to figure out which sponsor am I going to go with. Now, that particular perk in the book is called Murder Tractor. Oh, I can't see, so it's Murder Tractor. Murder Tractor is part of the Aggression perk. And each of the sponsors that are listed in the book will each have access to 2 different classes of perks. So we're going to go through, we got the various different sponsors over on page 91 of the main rulebook. So I'm looking through it, I'm going to find which one has that. Now luckily they're basically right next to each other. So we have the Warden, which has access to Aggression and Badass. And we have Scarlet, kind of a pirate themed team, and that one's going to have access to tuning and aggression. Looking at the other perks and the other abilities, I'm deciding I'm going to go with Warden. So now I kind of have something a little bit more fleshed out. The next step is actually put the math together. So for that, we're going to go over to the computer. I'm going to do some screenshots and show you what tools I use to actually do the math for the team. So we'll see you in just a second. All right, so when you're actually doing the math for your team, you can definitely do this in pen and paper, write it in a notebook. You can build spreadsheets for it. If you are already a tabletop miniatures player, you probably already have BattleScribe. That's another option. The output, it's a little bit futzy to use, particularly for newer users. The tool that I found works the best is an online tool that's called in the community Luke Razor. Who built it? I don't know. Who's hosting? I don't know. So user beware, but I've been using it for a few years now and I have not had any issues. So simply we're going to go to Gaslands Team Builder, and right there, for me, it's the first result is lukerazor.dx.am. So this is the page. It's pretty simplistic. It's got some really nice tools available for you. You've got shortcuts of what the different vehicles are. We've got shortcuts for all the weapons, upgrades, sponsors. This is going to tell you what perk classes they have. Cargo, which is for some different gameplay modes. Injuries is for when you're playing campaigns. But we're going to concentrate on, initially, these first couple. So we're going to go through, and we're going to go over here, and we're going to add a standard team. Now, we already know what we want, or at least I know what I want, which is a single team, a garbage truck, that's going to smash vehicles. So you're going to want to go create a name for your team. For me, it's going to be taking out the trash. Not overly creative, but is what it is. Now here, this is where we select our sponsor, and we already went through and know that we want to go with Warden. Now we're going to add a vehicle. Right here we hit add vehicle. And this is the point where if you were building a team with 2 cars or a car and 2 buggies, you would just keep adding vehicles. Now the first thing you're going to notice up here, this is how many cans we have. We're starting with 50. Then we have 36. That's how many points we've already spent. So we're going to get rid of these bottom cars. And now we know we don't want a car. We want something heavyweight. So we're going to go down. We're going to hit heavy truck. As we can see, that's worth 25 cans. So we have 25 cans to play with. Now we've already selected Warden. And let's go ahead and get that first perk in right away. So right here, we see perks, rules, costs. So this pull-down menu allows us to select, and this is limited to the perks that are available to the sponsor we picked. So we're going to, where is it? Murder Tractor. And there we go. It's 5 points. It's added the points up already. Now, I know we don't want to just bear truck. We want this thing to survive its collision, so we're going to want to make sure we have a ramp. So we go here to upgrades, and not upgrades, it's actually under weapons. We don't want any upgrades at this point. We're going to start with weapons. So we have the default handgun, which there's a handgun for every crew member, and we're going to add a ramp. There it is. Boom. Now, if you're confused about the weapons and what they are, just go ahead and click here, and it's going to show you. It's going to show you the basic stats for it. And again, this tool is not a replacement for the rulebook. These are just summaries of the rules that help to create game aids. But definitely make sure you're supporting Osprey. Make sure you're supporting Mike Hutchinson. It is not an expensive book, and we want to keep seeing Mike Hutchinson developing game systems because this is a great one. So now we have the RAM. Now I think it'd be hilarious if that vehicle pushes someone out of the way, crashes them into another vehicle, and then you know what? We light them on fire with a flamethrower. So we're going to add a flamethrower. Now it defaults to the front. You can always change this pull down. Allows you, do you want it rear, the side, or do you want it in a turret? Now for me, I'm going to go with the side because I figure those vehicles are going to be on the side of me after I smash them. So now we see we've added an extra 8 points in weapons, brings us up to 38 points. Let's see. Now I think we're going to want to add some more perks. And in my case, I decided I wanted to go with some other ones that complement Murder Tractor and the theme I'm going with. So we're looking at Battle Hammer. And again, if we go over to sponsors, down at the bottom, you're going to see some of these. It's kind of tough to dig through this because it shows you everything, doesn't break it down, but it gives you a little bit more rules. But we're going to go with the Battle Hammer, which means we get a +1 attack for each hazard token. We're going to add Road Warrior. Now, once per activation. If this vehicle successfully causes one or more hits on an enemy vehicle at any point during its activation, this vehicle may remove a single hazard token at the end of its attack step. That plays out nicely with the next one we're doing, which is Madman. At the end of the vehicle's movement step, if it has 4 or more hazards, may remove a hazard and place it on somebody else. Now, so actually, the Battle Hammer and Road Warrior actually go pretty well together. Because if you have, this Battle Hammer is happening before Road Warrior takes effect. So anyway, now we're up to 47 points. Well, cans in this game. Oh, let's see. We're going to what is available for 3 points. And we can see that there's not a lot of more perks that we can afford. And if we look under weapons, there's not really any upgrades we can afford at this point. We can look at the upgrades, and there's not really anything that's available to us. So we're going to look at weapons and what's available at 1, 2, or 3. And we can see we can get a machine gun if we wanted, which might not be a bad idea. But I'm going to go with the exploding ram. This is only used once. So your first collision, you're going to do a lot more damage. So this is going to add 66 to your smash. So, and it's highly explosive. So again, some of these special rules, you're gonna go back to the rule book to find out what that means. So again, this tool and player aids it produces are not replacements for the rule book. No. The best part about this tool that really made me want to go with it exclusively is this. Up here in the print mode, it produces this. I'm going to click keyword rules reference. Basically, once this is printed out, it produces a player aid, which I can hand to a player that's never played the game before, and now they have a pretty good idea of what their abilities are and how this vehicle works. As I can see, I did misspell trash, didn't I? We can fix that. We're going to close the preview. Let's go and fix that quick. So, and we're going to call the vehicle, we're just going to call it Murder Tractor. All right. So, again, now this, I usually print this out and laminate it. Now I can hand someone that player aid, give them a dry erase marker. They can mark off their hull points. Usually right here where the max gear is, we put a die, which shows you what your gear is, if it's right nice in that little square there. So if there's any questions about how to build these, please go ahead and hit me up in the comments. If anyone's have other tools that are even better than this, again, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what other people are doing. All right, so I think that's all we need to see. Okay, so now I'm back at the desk. So we're showing how to put this together. And this is the player aid that I print out, laminate, and this is what I have for all of my players and all of my teams. It's going to have a lot of the shortcuts, the rules. Use a little dry erase marker, and we just reuse these over and over again. I play this game at the store. I set it up. People sit down, they play. Some people bring their own teams. I also run this at conventions quite a bit, and it really smooths out the process. So again, this is one of my favorite games is Gaslands. And I find that Luke Razor team builder is just the best. So if you have any questions, hit me in the comments below. And then this is going to be part 1 of probably 3 videos. The next 2 videos are going to be how we go from a raw matchbox, how we take it apart until we get to this. So the next part will probably be how we take it apart, repaint the parts, and collect the components for building it. And then the last one will probably be putting it all together and finishing touches. So hopefully you found this interesting. And if you did, hit subscribe so you can get notifications when the next parts of this video series come out. So until next time, This has been Grover at Old Ones with Dice.